Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Class 47 Peter YouTube channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at a new release from Rapido Trains UK, which is the Liverpool and Manchester Railway Lion. Now you're probably all thinking at this point, well, hang on a minute, don't you already own a model of Lion? Well, I do, yes, it's the Hornby model. So you're probably thinking, well, why have you got the Rapido one? Well, because I wanted to get the Rapido one. I mean, I do already have a tip-filled Thunderbolt train pack on pre-order, and so I thought it might be nice to own Lion in all three of its guises. Its 1930 guise, and then this one, which the model I'm looking at in this review is the 1980 condition that it was in. And then there's Thunderbolt, as it appeared in the tip-filled Thunderbolt film. So I thought it just might be nice to have all three conditions that the loco has run in. Why not? So this model has just arrived in the post, and we're going to get this open and we're going to have a look at it, and then we'll see what it's like. Now at this point in the review, I would have the model on the track and I'd be talking about how there's no quality control issues with it, etc. But at this point, as you can see, the loco is still separated from its tender, which they are when they're in the packaging, when you first get it. So I just thought I'd show you how you connect both the loco and the tender together. So the connection for the loco and the tender, as you can see, uses this socket, which we've seen before on models such as the Batman Class 158, and we've also seen it on the real track models Paces as well, plus Batman's V2, and there's a few others. So this seems to be the sort of thing we're now starting to see for models like this. So to connect the loco and the tender, what you have to do is you have to align both of them. At this point the tender just wants to roll away. Now you do have to be careful when handling the model as well. Don't hold it by the coupling rods, or side rods as some people call them, because they can break, because they are fragile, according to the instruction manual at least anyway. So it's best to hold the model by the frames or by the wheel arches here. So you align both the loco and the tender together, like so, and then you just gently push the loco and the tender together, and there you go, that's how you connect the loco and the tender. And then what you can do is, if the footplate is raised, you can gently press it down like so. You do have to be careful with the footplate though, because the footplate is made of metal, and I understand that the bracket is actually plastic. So here we have Lion out of the box and down on the layout. So as you would expect me at this point to say, there isn't any quality control issues with this model. It's in absolutely immaculate and mint condition. It's in the superb factory finish that you expect it to be in and want it to be in when you buy it. There wasn't any damage done to the model, no bits that had fell off, they had to be glued back on again, etc. Because this model cost me 152 quid, so you want it to be in mint condition basically. There shouldn't be anything wrong with it when it gets to you. And that brings me on to the running, which this model runs beautifully in both directions. It has a very smooth mechanism to it, and again, when you buy these models you actually want them to work. Because when it comes to buying a new model, there's nothing more disappointment than finding out that it just doesn't work properly and it's faulty, and then you have to send it back, either for a replacement or a refund, however you choose to go about it. And also, this model negotiates around the radius of curves on my layout perfectly. Didn't experience any issues there, and again, there shouldn't be any issues when you buy this model, because it's not going to be any good otherwise if you buy a model, and it's not going to really be that practical if it starts derailing on the layout. It copes very well also on the adjacent lines where the station area is going to be, where the platforms will go. I expected it to derail on the small curves that I used. I think it's possibly radius 1. I can't remember what radius I've used there. But you know, I was unsure if it was going to manage around those curves, but it has. And so again, that's great to see. So, am I glad that I bought this model? Yes, I am. So now we're going to come on to the model itself. So, first things first, I would say that the Rapido have nailed the look of Lion. Everywhere you look at it, it looks like the prototype. I can't find anything that's incorrect or wrong on this model. To me it looks spot on and exactly like the prototype. Like it's been scaled down to the size of a model after it's been zapped by a shrink ray gun, or perhaps maybe put in some sort of shrinking machine or something. But if you was to put this up by the real thing, it doesn't look out of place in any way. It looks exactly like the real locomotive. So now we're going to move on to the detail of Lion. First of all, we'll start with the buffers. They're not sprung and they're not made out of metal, they are just plastic parts, but they're not lacking in detail though. You can see that they've captured the detail that you see on the buffers on the real thing, so that's great to see. And personally I don't really care, to be honest, if the buffers are sprung or not, because I do think sprung buffers are a pointless feature really, but there you go. You can also see you have the 3 chain link couplings there on the front of the buffer beam. You can also see the cylinders there, and you can see the rivet detail on those. And I think what's presumably meant to be either lubrication pots or possibly drain cocks on those. But regardless, those little bits of detail have been painted as well, and they're separately fitted. On the frames of the loco, you can see the rivet detail. It's always great to see the rivets. And just above the frames you can see we have the springs as well. And on the frames of the loco we have what I presume are builder's plates. But I can't actually zoom in with the camera up close to see what it says on them or anything, because the camera doesn't seem to want to focus when I tried to zoom in fully on it. Moving to the boiler, you can see they've captured the wooden planks that you see on the boiler barrel, which is true to the prototype. You've also got the nameplate as well. You don't get any extra nameplate supplied with the model, but that doesn't really bother me. But you can read what's on the nameplate. They are legible. You can see they've got the style of the font correct for the Lion nameplate. And you've also got this bit of detail just here, again that you see on the prototype, and it's been picked out and painted very nicely. You've also got the boiler bands as well, picked out in a gold colour. Looks very nice. Moving to the wheel arches, and you can see they've picked out the trims on those in gold, which I think really highlights them. And again, the detail on those looks fantastic. Moving to the smoke box door, which have got the face of the locomotive correct. As you can see, this smoke box door is a different type to the ones that we are now all more familiar with, which is, this is how they was on these locomotives when they first appeared, before it changed later on. The smoke box door itself, it doesn't open, but doesn't really need to, but the detail for it is there, including the handrail, which is separately fitted, just in the middle of the doors there, as well as the hinges, etc. You've also got some rivet detail on the smoke box. So they haven't left out any details on this loco. You have to appreciate the attention to detail that Rapido has put into it. Moving to the chimney, which again is correct to as per the prototype. And you've got the chimney cap as well, which is actually made of metal on this model, which is fantastic, and it's being very nicely painted. And I think what's meant to be a copper colour. Moving to the firebox, which again, like everywhere else on the loco, it's portrayed accurately to that of the prototype. You have these parts of the firebox which are made of wood, as they are on the real thing. You can see they've captured the wooden plank detail very, very nicely there, and the rest of it is made of, I believe it's meant to be copper, I think, but I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's been very, very nicely painted, and the paintwork on that just looks stunning, I think, in my opinion. Even the detail that's gone into the side rods is absolutely fantastic, and the wheels have the correct number of spokes as well. Again, you do have to be careful with the side rods when handling the model because you don't want them to break. But that doesn't affect the model's performance though, because as we've already seen, it runs superbly well. Moving to the rear of the cab, you can see we have the footsteps just here. They're correct to the prototype. You can also see we've got the, I think you can call them cab sides, and you've got the rails on the sides of them, and the detail that's been put into those is just absolutely stunning. Moving to the detail on the back edge, you can see we have got the whistle and the safety valves which are present. They are plastic parts and they are very fragile, so you will have to handle those with care because you don't want to break them off. You can see you've got the regulator there on the model, as well as the water gauge glass there as well, which again the detail on that looks stunning. And then you've got the dial there, which that was added on the model, I think it was 1979 around that time. It wasn't present on the loco when it was first restored, when it was in its 1930s condition. You can also see the rest of the detail there on the back end, such as the fire-hole door and all the rivets. Moving to the tender now, which captures the look of the real thing superbly. You've got metal wheels for a start. Just look at all the rivet detail that you can see on the tender frames, not to mention the axle boxes and springs, which are very well represented, and again as per the prototype. You can see all the rivet detail on the tender body sides. The front of the tender has separately fitted handrails. Moving to the top of the tender, we have rivet detail. You've also got the water filler cap there at the back. You can see that has a separately fitted handrail on it, though the water filler cap itself doesn't open. Doesn't really need to though on the model. You can also see we have the handbrake there as well for the tender. There is a coal load in the tender, and that does look to be removable when you look at it, but I'm not going to try to remove it, simply because I don't have my needles or whatever on me at the moment, and I can't really be bothered to go back into the house and hunt them out. And I wouldn't like to try to use my fingernails for this either, in case I damage any part of the detail on the model. Moving to the rear of the tender, you can see we have a separately fitted handrail. We have the buffers as well. Again, they capture the look of the prototype superbly. And you can also see that we have the chain link couplings as well on the back of the buffer beam. Plus you also have some nice rivet detail on the buffer beam as well. Now, sticking to the couplings, this model comes with the little peg that you see on the Hornby Stephenson's Rocket and Hornby's Lion, so that allows you to couple up to the period stock to make a prototypically accurate train with Hornby's first class and third class coaches, which that's great to see. But then you also have a tension lock coupling, which is interesting. Now, I think this could be because before they announced Lion, Rapido announced they were doing the Titfield Thunderbolt models, and of course they were producing Thunderbolt. And obviously because that would need tension lock couplings to allow it to couple up to the rolling stock that you get in the pack, that you would have seen with the locomotive during the film, then they decided to come out and announce Lion, so that's probably why the tension lock couplings are there. But if you like Rule 1 and you want to just run the model with whatever you want, then the couplings are there for you to do that if you want. I mean, I'm always tempted just for a laugh to couple this loco up to, I don't know, let's say a couple of L&MR seat coaches or whatever. Not something that I'll be doing most of the time though, because I would want to run this model with a prototypical train behind it. But the idea is there, should I want to go down that road. And like I said, if I do that, it would just be for fun and a laugh. The only thing I have to say about the couplings themselves is that it's the same couplings that we've seen on models such as, for example, the South Eastern Chatham Railway 6-wheel brake van. The couplings don't come in NEM pockets. They already have the dovetail connector attached to the NEM couplings, so that could make changing couplings such as magnetic couplings perhaps, or even caddies or whatever, possibly a bit tricky. With the South Eastern Chatham Railway 6 or brake van, I had to modify a magnetic coupling just so that model could take them. You can also see we have the brake rigging there on the tender, and you can also see the electrical connection there from the tender and the socket from when we connected it earlier. Just thought I'd show that bit in. Moving to the livery application, which is very neatly and well applied. They've got the colours pretty much correct for the loco, and they're very nicely and evenly applied, no imperfections or blemishes anywhere at all. So it looks stunning, and particularly with the lining on the tender, I think it really lifts the livery in my opinion. Not to mention the gold details as well, such as for example on the boiler bands and on the wheel arches, etc. It really does bring out the livery a lot more, I think. So now it's very much a case of seeing double, because we have on the layout both the Rapido Trains lion, which is nearest to the camera, and then just over on the other side we have Hornby's model of lion, which came out last year. Now the Hornby model depicts the loco in its 1930s condition when it was first restored, though interestingly they have not yet released lion in its 1980s condition, so it will be interesting to see if Hornby does release the model in that condition, whereas Rapido have released it in both its 1930s and 1980s conditions, as well as of course it will also be releasing line as it appeared in the tip-filled Thunderbolt as Thunderbolt. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to compare both models. So first of all I'm going to compare them between the weight, and there's definitely a difference in the weight with these two. We'll start with the Rapido model, which of the two of them is by far the heavier, and that's because the Rapido model actually has parts made out of metal. I believe it will be die-cast metal. And so according to the scales, the Rapido model weighs in at 180 grams. Now the only thing is with weighing with scales, you do have to find that the flatter the surface the better, because I was already trying to film this on other parts of the layout and I was getting different readings. But that's the flattest surface that there is. And now we're going to weigh the Hornby model. And the Hornby model weighs 98 grams, and the Hornby model is the lighter of the two. However, that being said, I have not had any issues with traction when trying to run prototypical trains with Liverpool and Manchester Railway stock. So now I'm going to talk about the difference between the models in detail. So the first thing I'd like to point out is with the Hornby model, on the firebox and on the wooden planks on the boiler barrel, you actually have some detail in the wood. Now it is very nice that detail is there, but the way it's been done, it looks like it's been wood that's varnished. It's a similar look to Hornby's L&MR 6-wheel coaches and teak coaches, for example, as well as their Gresley and Thompson suburban coaches. Looking at the Rapido model, not just the 1980s condition one you see here in front of you, but also with Rapido's 1930 condition lion model, they don't have that detail on the wooden planks. And in fact, looking at the real lion locomotive, there is some detail in the wood, but it's not the detail that you see on the Hornby model. It's sort of a more of a patchy look. If you look up the photos on Google, you'll know what I mean. So there is a difference in the detail there. You know, that's not to say it's necessarily a bad look on the Hornby model. I do quite like it. It's something a bit different, but it's up to you to make your mind up over that. One bit of detail I've spotted on the Hornby model that shouldn't be there is the dial. Hornby's model, as you see it here, is depicted in the 1930 condition, and it didn't have the dial on the back head during this time. That was fitted around 1979, somewhere around that. Basically it was present on the loco in its 1980s condition, but it shouldn't be here on this model in its 1930s condition. One thing I've also spotted on the Hornby model is these are supposed to be those chain link couplings that you see. Now the Rapido model doesn't have these on the rear buffer beam of the tender on Rapido's 1930s condition Lion model, and I can't say I've spotted it in photographs either of Lion from around that time, so chances are these bits of detail shouldn't really be there. Now we've already seen the electrical tender and loco connection on the Rapido model, so we're going to have a look at it on the Hornby model, which there is one, but it uses the plug socket, which this is something that Hornby is changing on some of their models. They're now going for the same style of loco and tender connection with the pins and the socket that you see on the Rapido line that they're going to be using on models such as, by looking at the artwork anyway, they've already used it on their 00 Flying Scotsman models, and it looks like based on the artwork they're going to be using that on the P2s and Black 5s and dare say other new releases. I mean, this tender connection works well, but it is a bit of a pain to disconnect it. This is something that really you need to be very careful of. You've got to be careful you don't snap any of the wires. Also, sticking with the underside of the Hornby model, you can see that they've gone to the trouble with the attention to detail. You can see all the inside motion detail there underneath the model. And on the Rapido model, that detail is absent, but to be honest with you, I don't really mind that, because that is detail at the end of the day that you're never really going to see. So one could argue, is that detail that we really need? It is nice to see when you look at it, but you're not going to see it anyway. There's a difference in design as well with the footplate. With the Rapido model, the footplate is a metal part, but the brackets used for it are made of plastic. It's different, however, with the Hornby model, because with the Hornby model, it looks to be an all-metal construction. There's a difference in design with the chimneys as well. You can see on the Hornby model, the bottom of the chimney, where you can see the rivet detail, that's a moulded piece on the smoke box. The chimney itself is all a separate fitting, and I think, if I remember correctly, I think there's some metal inside that. Whereas with the Rapido model, the chimney is all one separate part. Even the bottom of the chimney there with the rivet detail on, that is not a moulded part of the smoke box. That whole chimney is one separate fitting. There is a difference as well with the chimney caps. On the Rapido one, it's a metal part. Hornby's, it's just a plastic part that's painted. One other thing I have noticed with the Rapido model, you can see the top of the boiler looks like it's been made in two parts, because you can see there is a join line there. Not something that bothers me personally, and when it's running you can't really notice that. But you know, it's not like it's a major gap. You can see it's just a very slight join mark, but it is more noticeable when it's stationary, as it is. With the Hornby model, that's not the case. It's all made in one piece. Although you can see that there is some joins around by the wheel arches, as you can see. And also with the Hornby model, unlike the Rapido one that has NEM couplings as well as the peg, so it can couple to Hornby's Liverpool and Manchester Railway stock, with the Hornby model you just get that little peg, you don't have NEM couplings. So I've compared both models of a Lion produced by Rapido Trains and Hornby. That's as far as I can go, because I don't think I can really compare anything else on both models. So for my verdict on it then, you're all probably thinking at this point, well, which is the better model? I mean, I have to say at this point, for the record, both models are great models, and you know, I would recommend both of them, either of them, to be honest. But for which is the better one, and I have had to do quite a bit of thinking about this one. I think it just goes to the Rapido model, because it is a heavier model, so there's certainly going to be an advantage there for traction and also slow running. But also I can see a particular advantage of that for especially being on layouts that have inclines. Whereas for Hornby's model, being a lighter model, if you have a layout that has an incline, there possibly might be an issue there. And I don't know if the Hornby model would be able to pull very many of, for example, teak coaches or Mark 1s or whatever. I wouldn't really know, because it hasn't got an end pocket, so I can't really do that experiment, to be honest. But, you know, like I say, they're both great models. I mean, I would improve the design on the Rapido model, the brackets on the footplate, replace them for metal ones rather than plastic ones. And I would improve the design on the chimney on the Hornby model. Possibly maybe even the loco and tender connection. It works great, it's just that you have to be careful with it. But regardless though, they are both great models. But we all have our different opinions. Some people might say Rapido's is better, some people might even say Hornby's is better. It's up to you at the end of the day. I'll let you draw your own conclusion. So I think what we're going to do now that I've pretty much covered most of the detail at least on the Rapido model, I'm now going to do a running session with it, and I shall be doing a running session with both models of the Lion, being as I have both of them out on the layout, I might as well do. And then I'll come on to my final conclusion for the said model. So I'll see you in a bit. So we've seen both models of the Lion running around the layout, and also that double header at the end. I just could not resist doing that. I know it's going to hurt some people's heads seeing both models of the Lion in both its 1980s and 1930s guys double heading, but I just thought it just had to be done. I just couldn't resist doing it. And if you're curious to know how I did it, I didn't use any couplings. I just placed one model in front of the other and turned the power on, and that was that. So it seems that both models seem to be similarly geared. That's how it seems to be. So what's my final conclusion then on the Rapido Trains model of Lion? Well, to be honest with you, there can only really be one outcome from all this. It's not going to be a bad conclusion by any means. For my conclusion on it, I think it's a superb model. I mean, it's fantastic in every way, shape or form. It runs really well. It's a really heavy model, so no issues with traction. And the detail is just exquisite. So, money well spent. And I'm glad that I now have both models of Lion from Rapido and Hornby, and I can't wait to get my Rapido Trains tip-filled Thunderbolt train pack that I have on pre-order, and then I'll have all three versions of Lion together, so I might even be tempted to even do a triple header with that one. We'll have to see. But I'm over the moon with this model. The only thing I would say is that I do wish that it did come with some figures to put in the cab, to have some locomotive crew, like the Hornby one does. But I'm sure I can get some crew from somewhere, so I shall definitely have to get some crew for this model. Especially with it being an open cab model, especially on models like this, they are especially in need of crew, because it just at the moment looks like a ghost train without them. So in summary then, an absolutely superb model from Rapido Trains. They've done it once again. You know, they really do produce some cracking models, it has to be said, and this is definitely one of them. So my verdict on this model, I would definitely recommend it. Go ahead and buy it. Get your wallet out and spend some money. Whether you just decide you want to get the one model or all of them, do it by all means. So that's the end of my review on Rapido Trains' model of Liverpool and Manchester Railway Lion. Thank you all so much for watching this review, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As ever, if you like what you see, please do subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, feel free to leave a comment, and check out all my other videos I've got on the channel. But until next time, stay tuned for the next one. Bye for now. Take care.